Hey everybody, welcome along. My name's Alan Furley, and the session I'm going to do today is to help you uncover jobs that perhaps aren't advertised. So let me just make sure that this is all alive before I begin. There we go. So like I said, the session today is all about hidden job opportunities and how you can make sure that you're not simply relying on job adverts to find the best job for you, because there are a lot of jobs that you can get through applying for adverts. There's also a lot of jobs that come from not seeing a job advert and applying for it. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today. So please, if you're watching, then like, comment, ask questions along the way. Before I jump into the things you might want to do to help uncover hidden job opportunities, just a bit of context. So in the UK, at least, we're coming to the end of the summer holidays. So what you'll find is that the floodgates won't necessarily open next week when people return back to work, but there's no doubt that the last few weeks you'll typically find hiring processes, people's ability to respond to messages, etc., it's a lot slower. So what you'll see as you go in September, this is a really good time to be looking for work. So if you're on this session and you're looking for work, then you're in the right place, you're approaching this at the right time. Now, why is it important that you don't simply rely on job adverts? Well, a few different reasons. So there's various kind of studies and research and statistics that you can look at over the years, which suggest maybe 50, 60, 80% of jobs that people get don't come from adverts. They're the hidden job market, if you like, roles that are never advertised, but people clearly get and move. And I'm sure you've seen people in your network that have moved, and they'll talk to you about not necessarily having applied for an advert, but got a job through a different method. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk to you about today. LinkedIn's own research suggested that 85% of jobs are filled through networking. So I guess they would say that, wouldn't they? Because their platform is all about building your network, but there's no doubt that a lot of jobs do come through that network that both you have today and that you can build through some of the things that I'll talk to you about. So the idea is for me to talk for 10 or 15 minutes and make sure I'm giving you an understanding as to the things you might want to do if you're looking for work at the moment to help maximize your potential of getting the right job for you. So I'm going to cover 7 or 8 different points, and they're points that you could, you Google and uncover. So there's no silver bullet that I'm going to talk to you about today, but I will also bring that into those advice examples of people that have got jobs through this methods or through these different tactics in recent times. And 3 of the examples I'll give you would be people that I've hired in the last 6 months as well. So real life examples of how this can work to get you jobs, both what I've seen directly and what I've seen over the last 20 odd years in recruitment as a whole. So I guess the overall thing that you want to think about is your best chance of getting a job is through your network. So whether you're sitting there thinking you've got a really strong network at the moment, or whether you know that your network isn't quite as good as you might like it, you need to develop that. There's no doubt that a lot of the things that I'll talk about today, you could fit under a banner of networking. And that's a really good starting point. So if you're in a position where you're looking for work at the moment, and let's put aside the idea of applying for jobs through adverts, which is valid, but not what I'm covering today, then how can you leverage your network to get the right job and to maximize the opportunities that are coming to you? So I've spoken to a few people about this and heard people approach it in different ways. And one of the best examples I can think of is a guy who was very systematic. He was looking for a job as a product person, and he then made a list of people that would hire product people in his network. So chief product officers, got 10 people that he had warm connections with, probably 3 or 4 times that he didn't have such a warm into, but were part of his LinkedIn connections. And then very systematically contacted 5 of those each day, asking to get in touch with them in the hope of leveraging his network to uncover job opportunities. And that might seem pretty obvious. I think the bit that really seemed to work well for him was the approach he took. He wasn't going to those 5 or 10 people he knew well and asking for a coffee and saying, have you got any jobs? And he wasn't approaching the cold people with that line either. What he did was went to them and asked for advice. I'm looking for my next role in the product space. I can see that you've worked in this area for a while, and or I know that we've worked together before. This is an area you know well. Can I grab a coffee and get some advice off you along the way? And by asking for advice rather than asking for jobs, he did get some really good advice, but he also got job opportunities flagged to him along the way. Being front of mind with his network allowed people to say, well, actually, maybe I've got something coming up that I could talk to you about. And also to be able to then get them thinking about their broader network and who they might know without necessarily being asked the question directly. So using your network is really good, but if you're approaching your network, I would say ask for advice rather than for jobs. It's a lot less binary. People are hopefully more likely to say, yes, I can help you, rather than think, do I know of any jobs, yes or no? And that define whether they're willing to have a conversation with you. So using your network is the first one. Another thing you can do as part of that is go and talk to other people in your network who have the role that you're looking for, not to steal their jobs, but to ask them advice on how they found that job. So if you're looking for work as a head of sales, go and talk to other heads of sales that you know, or reach out to people, approaching them in a cold way, and ask them for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, jump onto a call, have a coffee, and understand how they went about searching for work, because no doubt that will help you to think through things that are relevant to the job you're looking for and give you insight into how others have found success. So going to talking to people that are in your network, both that might hire and that are doing the role you're looking for, is a really good way to leverage the power of your network. I'm broadcasting this on LinkedIn, so it's an obvious thing to talk about. Being active on LinkedIn is a great way to be front of mind to people that might be hiring. So that doesn't mean you need to post every day, or that you necessarily need to put a green label on your profile photo and say that you're open to work. But what I would advise is being active on LinkedIn to some degree. So that might mean that you're posting every day, could mean that you're posting every fortnight, but being active, being there in people's feeds, so that if they have a particular need, they're more likely to think of you. Going back and using LinkedIn to reconnect with people that you'd talked to previously, to comment and engage on posts, and to make sure that you've thought through how you can be front of mind to those people through engaging on a platform that clearly a lot of the purpose of it is to help people uncover job opportunities. So being active on LinkedIn is a really useful thing to think about. The fourth thing I think it is around events. So that could be in Bristol, we have a meetup called Southwest Founders once a month that I'll always go along to. And there's no doubt that going along that, you'll start to meet other people that are building startups or that are working at other businesses. Going to an industry conference. So if you want to work in climate tech, then heading to a climate tech conference is a really good way to build your network and engage with people who are active in the community that you're looking to engage with. So a really good example of this and how it's worked for somebody, a person that at ISL Talent, my business, we hired this week, or at least started with us this week, is someone that I met at a conference. So Tech Southwest run a leadership summit. And if you look on my LinkedIn post of today, you'll see that I announced Magda joining us. Now, I met her at a conference about 2 months ago. She was hosting one of the tracks and messaged me a week later saying she was looking for work. So there's a really good example there of going to a conference or an industry event is a good way to meet people that you might want to work with and work for. So being active in terms of going to the physical events is a really good way to kind of keep front of mind. Reaching out directly is my next one. So that might be that you've seen a company in the news because they've raised some funding or launched a new product, because they've had some activity. Maybe you want a contract. Perhaps they're in one of the lists, like top 50 startups in London or top 10 health tech companies to watch. Whatever the prompt is that's triggered you to engage with them in some way, then reaching out directly. In my world of startups and scale-ups, it's often going to be the founder, but it could be with anybody in the business, particularly those that you might have a connection to. Reaching out directly and opening up a conversation, which, going back to my earlier comment on leveraging your network, doesn't need to be asking for jobs per se, but perhaps just starting a conversation and getting to know that founder or that business. And no doubt that may well lead to potential opportunities. So another person that we hired this year, Charlie, did exactly that. He'd seen some stuff on ISL and the way we were working in partnership with startups and scale-ups. That really excited him. He connected with me, my co-founder Henry, and long story short, that led to us hiring him without ever advertising for the role, because it just so happened we were thinking about bringing someone on board in the very near future into the type of role that he was looking for. So a good match was made there without an advert ever being posted. So with the ability to make sure that we had someone good at the point we were thinking about hiring, and that was because Charlie reached out directly to us. So that's another good tactic to think about. Previous job interviews and offers can be a really useful thing. So if you've gone for an interview 3-4 years ago and either didn't get the job or perhaps got offered the job but took a job elsewhere, then going back to those, hopefully you left in the, you gave them a no in a positive way, or they gave you a no in a positive way, so you can prompt the conversation and didn't burn any bridges. Going back to those previous job opportunities can be a great way to find someone that knows you to a degree, and even if they're not advertising a job, may well be thinking of bringing someone on board, or as soon as you get in touch with them and there's that level of familiarity there, they would be thinking, well, how can I work with this person? So another example from ISL from the last month, there's a lady, Aisha, who we offered a few years ago, and then her situation changed, so she couldn't take the offer with us. We'd kept in touch. She got in contact a few weeks back when she was looking for something new, and she's now supporting us on our L&D on a part-time basis. So another example of how going back to previous job interviews and offers can help you uncover something. Final couple of things. So one that I don't think necessarily will help you uncover a lot of opportunities, but if you are not working at the moment, you probably can't search for jobs all day, every day. So thinking about some volunteering, some mentoring, some work where you can engage with people, which may not give you a financial return, but gives you a good chance to demonstrate to people your value, to keep yourself relevant, and to engage with people in the network. So I've done some mentoring through the Cranfield Trust in the UK, where they provide business mentors to charities. And although I'm not interested in looking for a new job, but that's exactly the sort of thing that doing that mentoring can help you give value to somebody, get value and develop your skills, but also potentially put word out there of the skills you've got and give you another chance of building that network and broadening it to get opportunities. And the final thing that I've got on my list, and if there's any questions that you've got, then please do drop them into the comments, and I'm happy to stick around and answer them. But the final one is to use a recruiter, which is perhaps an obvious one to make because I run a recruitment company, and I'm not going against the don't apply to job adverts narrative, because like I say, I think you definitely will apply to job adverts, and recruiters are a big part of that. But getting to know recruiters in your space can be a really good way to help bring about opportunities that either don't get to the advert stage, or even if they are advertised, you're already ahead of the game because you're a known quantity to that recruiter or headhunter. So if someone wanted to work in the tech startup space, then coming and talking to ISL, getting to know the team, me, would be a great way to be front of mind when we're talking to founders and startups and scale-ups about the challenges they're facing, which might not necessarily be a fully defined job that's being advertised, but may simply be that they're coming to us as a sounding board. So an example of this from July, so from a few weeks ago, I was talking at an event on hiring with a purpose, and there was a guy who was director of engineering for a company for the last 4 or 5 years and had moved on from that company, who was there. He followed up with me afterwards. We had a coffee. A couple of weeks later, although I didn't have anything at the time, he was still front of mind to me, talking to a client we'd hired 3 or 4 roles for. They were using us as a bit of a sounding board on some tech leadership resource to support their current team. And I was able to, on that conversation with the founder, talk to them about what they were looking for and say, this sounds like somebody you need is going to be looking like this. And as it happens, I've met with someone in the last couple of weeks who can do that. So I was able to talk to them on that very call about the person that I'd met. And within a week, that person had ended up gaining work on a consulting basis over the next 3 months with this client, and an advert was never posted because straight away we had the solution in mind And a big part of that was because that candidate or that individual had engaged with us as a recruiter, not through applying for an advert per se, but more saying, I can see you're in my space of tech startups. This is where I want to do some more work. Let's have a conversation. And then while I'm talking to a founder a few weeks later, then that person's front of mind. So I'll maybe race through this a little bit. So just kind of recap the things that you might want to do if you are getting frustrated with not getting responses from adverts, or if you are thinking, well, what more can I do other than spend half an hour a day applying for adverts and waiting for a response and maybe something never comes. There are a few different things we've talked about. So to recap on them briefly, the overall one is networking, and you're both using your current network and building that network into something that's more robust and gives you more value. So networking is the most important sort of overall thing to think about. Going and talking to people that have hired or have done the roles you're looking for, with the mindset of asking for advice rather than simply asking for jobs. Using LinkedIn, being active, social media more broadly, but LinkedIn being probably the most useful one, I imagine, for most of you. Attending conferences and industry events and meetups to get to know the businesses and the people that are active in the space you want to be. Reaching out directly to companies that look to be growing and that are interesting to you. Going back over previous job interviews and opportunities you've had before. Looking at volunteering, mentoring work, how can you support people around you, not necessarily for commercial gain, but for the benefit of relationships and getting to know people. And then finally, engaging with recruiters. So if there's any more questions you've got, then feel free to drop me a message or get in touch with one of my team. I'm going to do more LinkedIn Lives, helping people to look for jobs and think through and do sort of ask me anything. So keep an eye out for the next events that we're scheduled. Hopefully you've enjoyed what we've talked about today and found it valuable. If you've got any feedback, then please drop it in comments or drop me a message, and look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thanks.